Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pathfinder, a podcast by Payload, the leading digital media company in the space industry. My guest today is the wonderful Tina Ghataore, the Group Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer of Aerospacelab, as well as the CEO of Aerospacelab's new North America branch. Founded in 2018, Aerospacelab is a vertically integrated satellite manufacturer that designs and produces subsystems, platforms, and integrates payloads. We talk about Tina's background and career in the industry and do a deep dive on the company and its long-term goals. So let's dive right in. Tina, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mo. Thanks for having me.
You're a tough woman to get on the calendar. You're busy. You're very busy. But I know that's because good things are happening.
Yes, it's been a busy year. You're catching me almost at my 1 year anniversary here at Aerospacelab.
Oh wow! Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But maybe just to get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. Your career in the industry. You're very well respected. Every single time your name comes up, it's always in the most positive light. So clearly, you've been doing something right. So tell me a little bit about your path to Aerospacelab.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. Path to Aerospacelab. Let's see. I'm about to date myself, but I don't mind. I've been in the industry now. Wow. Started my career in 1995. So it's been, next year it'll be a good 3 full decades, right? As aerospace engineer by education, I like to say, a lot more smarter engineers in the room than I ever will be, and moved sort of my career from the baseline engineering into more business development, marketing, sales, strategy, and cut my teeth at the Boeing company in the early part of my career. Gave me a great foundation on how to work across departments, matrix organizations, learned core level of systems engineering as an aerospace engineer. So got to learn the basics and then just grew from there into different companies, large and small, and found my niche, which is trying to take products and services to market. Always had a job where the remit is international, and I like that. It's kept me, grounded in terms of having opinions and working across cultures. I love that, and it's not just invented here in the United States. I've spent my entire career working here in the United States, but there are smart people, new ideas, innovations happening globally, and I've been able to tap into that. Joining Aerospacelab almost a year ago now has been a great decision for me, and having a lot of fun, a lot of activity this past year. I came to Aerospacelab from Mynaric, again, 3 years of great work, building a great team, many of whom are still there, building the largest backlog the company has seen, or actually the largest backlog in laser comm products again, and being part of listing the company in the US on the NASDAQ. That was a lot of fun. Raising capital, maybe not a lot of fun, but it's got to be done. And then prior to that, I spent 3 years almost at Yasat, living in Abu Dhabi. I'd like to say that was one of the best experiences I've had in my career, living abroad and working there, trying to again build a mobility communication service business for Yasat. So really had a nice variety of roles, but again, go to market is where I excel, and large and small companies alike. There's been diversity in roles and locations that I get to fly to.
What sold it for you? What sold Aerospacelab for you? Why did you leave Mynaric and end up joining the company?
Well, when you have a brilliant founder and CEO in Benoît, and he, starts talking to you almost 2 years prior to you joining. You're trying to sell him terminals, but he's more interested in how you can work together, So I thought I would beat him down into buying some terminals for me. He beat me down to say, come join my team. And what attracted me is his vision, his drive, his ability to know what he's good at and how he wants to bring a team that can complement him. And, that's a great combination if you can find it. I'm not coming in as a founder. So, we've all worked alongside founders that have some kind of founder syndrome. And they just need to recognize where they need help. And this is where Benoît recognizes where he needs help. He had assembled a great team already. I saw what he had accomplished at Aerospacelab. We're 6 years old now. And so much has been accomplished even prior to me joining, and recognizing that he needed my help in charting the course for the next few years. And we just had a good matchup, personality, vision, drive, all of those things.
So tell me a little bit more about the history of the company, and a little bit about the vision that you're mentioning.
Yeah. Like I said, Benoît started the company 6 years ago. He's, had also an international career. He was out in the US at NASA Ames working in the early part of his career with the early start of the planet type planet team. So he knows that team well. He's worked in Switzerland, and he wanted to really find a way to innovate faster. He built the company initially to put, a group of in-orbit capability around Earth observation satellites. And the first satellite that Aerospacelab built was a CubeSat, and the components, etc. And he wanted to bring that fast-paced, innovative philosophy that he had been accustomed to working here in the US into Europe, and he did it. And he continues to champion a team that does that. A different way of thinking. Let's go is kind of our big mantra at the company, and having a vision of we can do things. We can innovate. We can vertically integrate to do that. We have the expertise. We have a nice blend of subject matter experts who are career people with a couple of decades worth of experience. And we marry that with new talent from universities across the globe. Europe, we've got a great one in Belgium, just down the street from us, so to speak. So the vision is really about building at scale, building great product, innovating fast. And those are not just buzzwords for us. We've demonstrated that we can design, build payload and satellite platforms and then launch them in less than 18 months. So product is ready by 12 months, delivered to SpaceX for integration. There's a lead time for things like that as well. So it's demonstrated that. And the vision is to continue to do this. As a small company, it's not always easy to get access to supply chains and parts. You're always at the back of the queue of someone else. So having the foresight into vertically integrating what we know how to do, having the foresight to do in-orbit demonstrations, which we've done. We have 8 satellites in orbit. So we are taking that risk away from the future customers, who's making my job easier. So I can now go in with my team and say, we have heritage. Yes, failures you learn from, but I bet on the side of heritage. Like, look, we flew, it's working. I don't need a headline of the opposite. It is inevitable. It will happen. We will learn from it. But in the early stages of a company, I think, especially a space company, heritage speaks volumes when you're trying to pursue new business.
So you run Aerospacelab North America. Tell me a little bit about how that fits into the broader structure of the business and why there was a need to have a division, so to speak, or a business segment focused on what I assume to be North American clients.
Indeed. So I wear two hats at the company, I like to say. My first big important role is Chief Strategy and Revenue Officer for the global company. So we're pursuing business at a global scale. Tapping into my experience, my prior experience before coming into Aerospacelab in a market, the North American market, commercial and government, was something that Benoît and I discussed very early on. And let's face it, it's a growing market. The opportunities exist. The barriers to entry are not significant. There are some, but so that was part of my decision-making process to joining Aerospacelab, is that we are prepared to invest here. So we're a wholly owned subsidiary set up here in the United States, and basically we are pursuing both commercial and government markets. I have a team that I've assembled here in the US. We're going to have a development and an assembly, integration, and test factory here in the US. And it's not just a sales office. We're going to be doing some real work tailored to the customer needs and requirements, right? The US government is a very specific customer, and there's flavors of US government as well. And so we are focused on the ones that can capitalize on significant R&D investments that have already been made into the products that we have at Aerospacelab, and now using that product line and leveraging it for really quick turnaround deployments of various size satellites.
And all of this for the U.S. business, at least, will be based in West Coast, it sounds like?
Indeed, yes. I'm on the West Coast. We haven't announced that, but coming soon, we'll be giving you a call on the location. It is a West Coast location, and it is very convenient for our customers to visit, but also convenient from a launch site standpoint.
Great,
we're used to going to Vandenberg, so we need
Yep.
access to Vandenberg.
Totally. Okay, so just taking a step back, I want to talk a little bit about the market opportunity here for satellite platforms, components. At face value, right? There's a lot of companies doing things like this, right? How do you think about how do you think about how Aerospacelab fits into the ecosystem, and how do you differentiate yourself?
Very good question.
And then, sorry, there's a few questions in there. There's the market opportunity question, and then there's the Aerospacelab specific question.
So the good news is the market opportunity exists, and it's nicely spread across what I mentioned, the government programs as well as commercial programs. Let me take that one step at a time. So on the commercial side, we are seeing new entrants that want to deploy specific types of missions. Take, for example, our new customer, Zona Space Systems. They're looking at deploying a ALT PNT, position, navigation, and tracking system. So they have a payload, but they're looking for a satellite platform to marry that with. And we're good at system integrating diverse payloads. So that's something we excel at. We've done a variety of our own different payloads as well as customer payloads, and our platform is versatile to accommodate that. So that activity is ongoing, and that payload integration will happen in the United States in our new factory. The government is embracing the use of small satellites of various sizes in a very quick turnaround manner. And by the government, I'm talking about the Space Development Agency, Space Systems Command. There are different parts of the government that have embraced the LEO orbit and sort of a diverse architecture in which they can deploy assets fast. That are not, $1 billion programs that have been delayed. They're looking for commercial off the shelf, and they're making it easier for people to companies of our size to engage with them, the non-traditional defense contractors, they call us, right? So they've actually gone out of their way to create vehicles through which we can transact with the government and not be buried in a lot of paperwork as some government programs can be, whether it's Space Systems Command front door office that really helps facilitate things, or the Space Development Agency, which has done a tremendous job over the last 4+ years, at least as long as I've known them, and their setup, where it's a very predictable purchasing cycle. And that's important for companies like us, right? When we're looking at our pipelines, where we're looking at how to spread our resources and investments, we look very careful at, well, what's the market opportunity? Is it one-off or not? So coming to your market opportunity question, that cadence of that's been communicated to the industry by the Space Development Agency around the capabilities they need, the cadence in which they need them, the price they're willing to pay for all of that, and the schedule by which they need, that's really important. And I can see that being followed up with some of the other agencies. I was just speaking at the NSSA, and they wanted me to speak to how industry, government, and capital comes together. It's kind of nerve-wracking. Had to headline General Goodline, but he reinforced much of what I had been saying, so that's exciting. So that's on the government side. On the commercial side, as I mentioned, Zona and others are talking to us about integrating their payloads at a price point that is very attractive. I like to say we provide value for the number we give you, and there's no really NRE involved there because those are sunk costs from an R&D standpoint. We don't just do platforms. We also sell our avionics subsystems, which are all TRL-9 in industry speak, technical readiness level. They're flown. They're doing great. So we can help other satellite platform builders who are procuring some of these components and can look at ours and say, okay, it's flight proven, low risk. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing, as well as help people out from a turnkey satellite standpoint.
A question. So we've had a number of bus providers on the show, and I've asked this question, so I can't not ask you this question, which is about SpaceX. How are you guys thinking about SpaceX's long-term bus desires, right? Or what they're planning to do within low Earth orbit, obviously well beyond Starlink, and what they're doing with Starshield and beyond. Is that something that comes up in conversation internally, or is that not something you guys are worried about?
I look to SpaceX's vertical integration as kind of I don't say a benchmark, but they're doing well. They're doing something great. I'm not too worried that they're just going to be a one company solution that fits all. To me, customers understand that diversity across suppliers is needed. Transparency across supply chains are needed as well. It's the operators, I think, that are worried more about SpaceX, in terms of subscribers that they're eating away at, etc. But we're not, because we're looking at the ability to work with. We have a thing we say, we're your partner from objective to orbit. And we really live and breathe that. So we want to understand your mission objectives, and we can package our products around that. So it's not one bus fits all, although if you've designed it like we have, you can accommodate a series of different payloads. And because you're vertically integrated, there's some flexibility to change a few things. You just can't achieve that at a company that maybe a large company without a huge NRE price tag. But SpaceX doesn't worry me. Kuiper's coming down the line. They're focused on their mission to provide services. I think they're going to make too much money trying to build some couple of dozen or a couple of hundred satellites for somebody.
Sure, I think that's fair. You mentioned this a little bit. Satellite platform. I know there's components that you build too. Walk me through sort of the current product set and like what that roadmap looks like. Is that sort of is what you have and what you offer now what it's going to look like for the next few years, or do you guys have other things in store?
Well, focus, as you know, in a company our size, we're now 350 people. We acquired Amos in Belgium, another great optical focused company on astronomy telescopes and space-based optical capabilities. So just strengthened our portfolio of technologies and products we can tap into. Our product portfolio is starting with, LEO satellite platforms. Our workhorse, our 150 kilogram satellites that are up there with 4 different variations of payloads that we've integrated. Is built on a set of avionics subsystems that we actually leverage from our way early days, right? When we started out. Now, when you have that core component in terms of baseline subsystems that you've developed in-house, you can build a smaller structure and package things down. So we now have 2 customers. They're announced. So Vioma is a European customer that's taking what we call our versatile satellite platform, Dash 50 kilogram. It's a smaller satellite. And then we're going higher. So the way we look at it is mission payloads are growing in terms of power needs, swap needs. And what we try to do is we look at how to maximize that with our baseline subsystems. But we also look at maximizing the volume and mass of these rideshare missions. So if you might be familiar with, SpaceX has a plate system that they use. So for example, our VSP-50 is perfectly maximizing the half plate volume mass kind of requirement. So we can extend ours to fit all of those. And the VSP-50 is a quarter plate. What does that do for you, an operator out there? It maximizes your overall mass volume launch cost ratio. So having done 3 consecutive launches on SpaceX, Transporter 8, 9, and 10, we've gotten a lot of experience in how to integrate satellites on that launch vehicle. We've also integrated on Vega, and now we're looking at, the successes that Firefly is having, or future launchers like Stoke, or in Europe, there's some new launch vehicles coming up. So the product line is very strategically tailored to maximize your dollar and then meet your mission objectives in LEO. Will we grow to go higher? Yes. When it's just a matter of the resources and the traction we have. But again, always thinking about it from what are these components that we can leverage that we've built. Our recent exciting news with the MDA contract, this is a big customer, a big prime that selected us for core power component on scale, 200 plus units to be built by us. The Telesat system is flying in a very interesting orbit. I don't know if they're public about it, so I won't say too much. But there's radiation environments to adhere to. And so our philosophy of taking COTS and up-qualifying them for radiation environments will remain with us as we look to larger satellites, higher power, that can fly in different higher orbits.
Okay. And how are you currently building the satellites right now? And maybe you can tell us a little bit of I'm going to probably butcher the name, but Charleroi factory?
Charleroi, yes.
Not even close.
Charleroi.
I'm actually embarrassed now because I assume this is a term with French origin, of course, right?
Yes.
So I am on a 267-day streak on Duolingo for French. So the fact that I got that word so wrong is pretty embarrassing. So
Okay, so you'll be forgiven, but if I screw it up after 8 years of studying French,
Yeah.
living in France, working, that would look really bad for me, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
So I think we'll cut you some slack, but I can't mess it up because I need to practice some more. But the team are really helping. Most of the time, I always say to them, just speak in French so I can start, getting that, getting more comfortable. So yeah, we have an operating factory in Monet, which is south. I'm going to get this wrong, south of Belgium, like Brussels, about 40 minutes, not too far. And that factory yields between 24 to 50 satellites. So 24 satellites annually on a single shift. So it's equipped to deliver that and manned to deliver that, right? Charleroi is a new mega factory that we broke ground on in middle of May. We have a great supporter in the Wallon region of Belgium, how it's split between the different regions. And we have, a plot of land that we have access to, that we're putting up a factory. And we have numbers out there that say 500 satellites a year of a particular size. Of course, if you're going to go bigger, that will be less. If you're going to go smaller, it's more. And we've designed it in a very modular manner, where our capital expenditure that's going to go into the factory is aligned with market needs. So we are building it ahead of business that we're foreseeing over that. But at the same time, we don't need to equip for 500 satellites right away. We know what the long lead items are. We know some of the programs that are coming into play in Europe. You've heard of them. I have. There's some constellation programs that Europe is looking at. But actually, even globally, there's benefits to building in Europe, and there are benefits to building in the United States. And it really just depends, especially there are certain payloads, as I mentioned, in the United States that can't leave the country. They're ITAR payloads. And so we have to have a footprint in the US. But there are certain benefits of doing a lot of international work in Belgium, so you can capitalize on that activity. In the US, the factory will be sized to between 75 and 100 satellites. Again, it depends on the actual size we settle on based on the customer needs. But Charleroi is going to come online in 2026. In the meantime, we're continuing to operate our factory in Monet.
So once all of the factories in development are built and online, what will be the max capacity of what you guys can build on an annual basis, roughly?
So if we take the high numbers, let's say, between 6 to 700 satellites, depending on an annual basis. And, the number could be 500, depending on the size. And if we want to double shift, if we want to automate certain things, automation, by the way, a lot of people ask me this question about, so it's just going to be a whole bunch of robots. And I'm like, CapEx? Do you actually need all those robots? If you think about industrial design right from the beginning and how these satellites are coming together, think of a satellite in a flower shape with a bunch of panels. If you're smart about how your panels are being manufactured and what units go on which panel, you don't necessarily need to have 100% automation, but it does help. So we want to learn from factories that have either gone way too far on their automation, have sunk a lot of CapEx, and try to create a real balance across both.
No, that makes sense. And I think I was actually chatting with another actual bus provider in the last couple of weeks, and he was mentioning to me about how this vision of these robotic arms, just putting pieces together and just working on it. That's not how it is, nor is it probably how it's going to work anytime soon, right? It's it just doesn't always make cost sense, especially when you're not, maybe maybe one day when you guys are building thousands of satellite platforms.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to go be a fly on the wall at the Starlink factory or the Kuiper factory, because there's probably a lot of automation there, but we're not at the point where if we kind of lose 20, 30 satellites, it'd be like, we'll just launch a few more. Like, we're
Right.
not there yet.
SpaceX has the benefit of, if a bunch of Starlink satellites go down, then the constellation still is working, right? Constellation's not going to stop working.
Right.
And they have sort of built-in redundancy, but you can't, which then leads to some corner. I shouldn't say cut corners, but there's some some adjustments, some sort of things they can take more liberty on in the manufacturing process that others might not, right?
They're doing smart trades, right? There are things they can over-design, over-engineer, and nothing gets launched quickly, right? So they're doing smart trades on how these are done. And this is a lesson that we could all learn, right? So we're always looking at a minimum viable product to launch with. As I mentioned, heritage is important. So we've tested a lot of our components, our subsystems out. And then we're confident when we're talking to a customer that, the risk is mitigated. The risk in space is always there, but the risk is mitigated through some of these things that you do. And then if you're open in your communication with the customer about it, then that's key. Some customers are willing to buy, engineering models and then, flight models, and some people want a structural model, and others are like, I only have this much money. This is what I want to do. I don't want this tested to the nth degree. I want you to do the testing that you would normally do. And we discuss the pros and cons and the risks, and then we move forward on that.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the customer base and traction, and maybe you're a go-to market person, right? So maybe talk and you've as a company, you guys have made a considerable headway with European customers, agencies. Talk to me a little bit about what your plan is in the U.S. Like, what is your sort of go-to market plan with commercial and government, and SDA specifically? I know that's going to be a large component of your focus and sort of target going forward.
So on the commercial side, I'll start with, we've had quite a bit of interest on Earth observation companies that want to launch between 10, 20, 100, 200 small satellites. And they generally come to us with a payload. And they know that we have in the industry they like to say a quiet bus. Essentially just means really stable, right? So we've designed our bus to really perfect the need for the sensors. And now we can, once you've done that, the complexity around doing the availability for telecom payloads, comes next, right? So we can do the whole spread of application types and different payloads. So that's the kind of customer that's coming to us, whether they're wanting very high resolution imagery at some, sub 50 centimeter kind of level, or they're looking at hyperspectral imagery, or they're wanting to detect gases, that sort of thing. And obviously they've done their homework on the market, the end market there, and they're looking to people who can deploy things faster, and heritage is important to them. Not just heritage, we've launched it, but we can show them how our vehicles are performing. So on the commercial side, there's that group. And then there are some, really large constellations being planned around direct to cell. So we're monitoring that. Those are larger spacecraft. They're power hungry. So this is part of our strategy to build bigger satellites, or I'd say accommodate, 4 kilowatt, 6 kilowatt 10 kilowatt power, you have to start with your building blocks of your power subsystem. What's your solar array going to look like? And then knowing how to package all of that to maximize your launch. On the government side, as I mentioned earlier, the Space Development Agency has created opportunities for non-traditional defense contractors. They're looking to diversify their platform suppliers. They should, because right now, although they have diversity at the prime level, when you really come down and start looking at the platform level, and even scary, you start looking at some subsystems. Off late, there's been news on many of these guys just using a single propulsion provider who's not performing, right? And so there's the diversity in terms of, the current primes going to just one vendor. And I've spoken about this, and I know the Dr. Tournier has spoken about this, and they really do want this diversity. SDA, May 31st, I believe it was. Yeah, it's always Friday. I don't know if that was a Friday, but it always feels like it's last day, published an RFP on Halo, which it specifically outlined the opportunity for non-traditional players in the bus community to be primes. And it's sort of their trial, I would say, program to get us all involved. And those proposals were due last week. So we're excited to be part of that pursuit.
That's great.
I'm sure there'll be, dozens of applicants, but you have to stand out, I believe, on heritage and your partners and demonstrated ability to think out of the box, but do it fast as well.
And how is the company funded so far? Privately funded? How, maybe talk a little bit about that. I know, actually, I'll let you answer. I tend to do that, by the way. Sometimes I tend to ask the question and then I tend to lead to the answer. I've actually realized I'd be
happy for you to say, well, Tina, I read this or I heard this, because then that keeps me very honest. I'm a private company, so I am at liberty to say a little bit more than if I was like in my previous company. I suddenly had to measure everything I said, right? And when I said it. We're called a Series B plus company. We announced our Series B raise a couple of years back. We did an internal round for our growth in the US, as well as funding Charleroi. And but the great news is we're revenue generating, right? So this is the cool stuff. Right? Why did I join Aerospacelab? Because they're already revenue generating, right? And so we, fingers crossed, the last numbers I saw, we want to be cash flow positive 2026. So in terms of needing more money, maybe, but because we have these big contracts that have come in, there's milestones associated. We have payments coming in from the prior contracts. We're paying our bills on time, and we have money to grow, to hire team, to invest in the right places. And when you do that with focus and with a clear strategy, then you can spread your resources carefully, right? So that's kind of what I believe in, is you can have a startup that's going to blow $1 million on a new brand. But, we just do things efficiently. We had a brand refresh, but we paid nowhere near that number, right? So, if I can do it on the economical way, we will do that. And this is the alignment that we have. So if we do need to raise more the end of the year or towards the end of the year, it will be for very specific needs for growth, to fund bigger programs as well.
Tell me a little bit about the long-term vision for the company. Like, where do you see the company in the next decade? And I should
I'm
say
going to
the
start
end of the next decade.
five, right? So I know the 10-year business plan is always attractive to talk about, but I've got my feet on the ground. So I'm going to
Yeah.
talk about 5 years. I can see
Sure.
that far.
Sure.
So first of all, we have to get our product portfolio expanded to address what I believe are the market needs. We talked about the higher power needs of some of the telecom constellations that are coming up, both on the government and on the commercial side. I don't fill my pipeline up with just one single constellation. I like to see diversity across commercial and government. I like to see diversity across application types, but also diversity across geographics, right? So at the moment, we're very focused on a subset of the world where I know that we can affect immediate wins, whether it's in Europe or whether it's here in the United States. You're seeing some of that come to fruition, right? We're pursuing business in Asia, but in very specific countries. And we're doing that in a very systematic way, and also in the Middle East, because we have a product market fit. So that's very important, right? You go in with a product market fit, you expand your product portfolio. So then the next 5 years, it's about infrastructure. We're going to build our infrastructure at the product level, the technology to support those products, and really build at scale and demonstrate that can be done. Beyond that, I'm sure we'll look at whether it's new technologies that we have to bring in, new services that we need to adopt to grow our overall product and service portfolio. And you know what? You need sometimes, if you really are going to adjacent markets or downstream or whatever, you're going to need new talent, right? It's
Right.
not the same talent that you employ to do your initial activities, right? So just like Benoît asked to have me come in to do some things specifically, I'm going to need to grow the talent pool if we try to hedge in any direction where my experience is not directly relevant.
Right. Well, certainly excited to see the future growth of the business and your plans, especially in North America. And I know for a fact that it's in good hands. So excited to see that. Now, Tina, I actually want to talk about some other things that more directly to your experience. I want to talk a little bit about the Middle East. Not a topic that we get to cover frequently on the show, but you're there, and you and I have had other conversations outside of this show about the Middle East, and not specific to Yasset, but more just curious, what do you think is going on in space and the Middle East, and maybe I'll start off with that generic question, but there's another question behind it that I want to ask, which is I hear more and more space companies, especially the companies that are raising these larger funding rounds, that are spending a lot more time on the Middle East to tap into the capital in the Middle East. And maybe talk a little also about how should companies think about how Middle Eastern investors are thinking about the space industry. Would love to get your kind of perspective on that. I don't know how much time you've spent on the investment side of that. I know you've mentioned you've spent some time raising capital before, but or fundraising, obviously for various ideas and initiatives. But maybe talk to me a little bit about that.
So Middle East, specifically, UAE, Saudi, Qatar, there are opportunities, immense opportunities there. I think that's the next space race is happening out there. Geographically, they are located in an area that security is important. And security comes not in just that obvious way, but also food security, climate security, physical security. So if you think of that in those terms, they're in a region that all of those things, the end need exists. A tremendous talent pool of people that are willing to spend the money to not only buy from outside, But now there's a shift in let's do things domestically. Let's do them to bring in the knowledge. Writing a check is easy enough, but bringing that knowledge and transferring it and having leadership that is local leadership, that's the phase that I believe the Middle East is in right now. Yes, prior to that, 70s, 80s, 90s, expat communities were helping with this activity. Now I look at the leadership that I interface with, local leadership, whether it's Emirati in the UAE, etc. I have a great, to me, those are family. Once you spend 3 years working there, with the respect they gave you, so that bond will remain with me. If you think you're going to the Middle East because you're just going to get a nice big fat check, very astute, very smart people who have the same level and even more levels of due diligence that's required to write you that check. Think of what is at stake and then go ask for that check, right? So the due diligence, I would say, is on par, if not more, in terms of getting funded. If you're smart, you'll put some, product development activities there as much as you can, and tap into the resources. They're geographically positioned, so you can tap into a lot of outsourcing companies as well that have positioned themselves in the UAE. And now, look at what's happening with the Yasat Bayanat coming together, Space 42, Mubadala is a powerhouse and funding companies and diverse sectors. Saudi are doing so many things on that front. You tend not to hear too much, but if you're in the right circles, you start to see where, fund of funds is happening, where they've put money into different markets. So I know that there's a lot of activity around the security aspects, whether it's like I say, climate, food, physical security, and so there are several programs that are being funded. But then that passion of exploration, the UAE Space Agency, the Saudis sending astronauts up. And that's really fueling the public interest as well. I remember being in Abu Dhabi when we were launching, Alia 3 at Yasat. And, here in the US or maybe in Europe, it would have just been like, there's a satellite launch coming up. We had flags on streets. It was like, the malls knew, people in the malls knew what was going to happen that early morning. So the spirit of the people and the dream of exploration is coming back from what it used to be, the great astronomers from the Middle East and the mathematicians. So now it's not all about oil anymore. It's about, exploration and space. And the younger generation are really feeling that. And then the educated generations who went out to study have come back into the countries and are the leadership that we deal with today.
No, I couldn't agree more. Every time we speak to tons of companies at Payload, we get requests for advice and thoughts and ideas around fundraising, particularly because it has been a little bit more challenging the last couple of years. And the Middle East as a topic does come up. And, I think there's this perspective that, okay, well, if I have a great idea and I'm a cool team, smooth talker, I can go to the Middle East and get some dollars, right? And I think people learned the hard way very quickly that that's not how it works. And, there may be a lot of capital out there for investment. But that does not mean it's blindly investing into things, especially if there is not a clear-cut case for how it helps the region. I think that that's obviously a significant part of it. If you can prove and you can showcase that a part of your business model is going to be reliant upon or will leverage the region, I think it just makes it a lot harder. It's a lot harder bar.
Right.
Yeah.
And it also depends how if you're a European company with product or you're a US company with product, certain things can be transferred from an export trade standpoint easily and others cannot be. So those are the kinds of things one needs to consider. But there's quite a few vehicles of early investments, accelerators type environments where I know that Abu Dhabi has made it attractive for founding teams to come and set up there. So it's good to explore, but go in with a solid idea and don't underestimate the due diligence that's going to be required.
Are there any, no, this isn't a Middle East folk specific question, but are there any companies, startups out there that you're watching very closely that you're excited about, that you're, you went from a public company, right, Mynaric, to now a private company, albeit a bit smaller than Mynaric, but so obviously you do have some startup blood in you, there's no question. I'm curious if there are other companies out there that you've been paying attention to or you think are interesting. To be clear, I'm not saying you're going to jump ship. I just mean just like as an enthusiast in the industry.
I've spent the last 2 decades advising various companies. I'm an angel investor myself, right? So I do liberally give advice to people that come up to me, and I tell them, like, just take it for what it's worth, right? But I'm a tech geek at heart. The satellite industry is kind of my area, and anything immediately around that. So I'm watching companies that have the core fundamental pieces that are going to be required for future growth, whether it's to build something faster, to get more compute power in, or to make things more secure, to do things around AI, how that can be leveraged, and then some downstream things. When it becomes a little too on the edge software, then that becomes a different community of people that I would sort of go to and say, what do you think about that company? But when it comes to, the next hot company that's doing propulsion, or the next hot company that's got, cybersecurity, certified equipment, I'm watching all those companies. But also the ones that sort of help you build requirements. Like there could be some, great companies that we spend hours trying to figure out, teams of people to try to write some requirements. There could be some companies that do that more efficiently. So design all the way through. I'm done with space tugs. I'm done. I don't want to hear about that. But they're needed. There was such a, you see, like, I don't know if they all suddenly come out of the woodwork, but there's so many, there's all these launcher companies, all these space tech companies, and then there's this kind of a trend. So I just like to, we need to explore more. So if I was putting my money behind something, I'd have at least a 10-year kind of outlook to it.
Well, if you're listening and you're building a space company, it sounds like Tina's pocketbook is open for business. So, as a prominent angel investor, as long as you're not a space tug, if you're a space tug, don't bother. So,
I mean, tech what I need, but the pocketbook's not that lush yet. It will be as I book a few more orders.
There you go. Well, when you're not focused on building satellite platforms and thinking about angel investing, what do you spend your time doing? What give us a little bit of what do you do for fun?
Oh, you mean when I'm not going to get to my second million on some airlines, membership program?
Yeah.
I I want to get back to reading physical books. I just moved into my home, meaning last 6 months. We were building our home, so I'm now decorating it. Love that sort of thing, design and decoration, kind of the different side of my brain that starts to work there. I do love to travel, but because I travel for work, I try to find new places, new cultures to visit. But I have certain goals this year, which is read more, get back to yoga, because it's been a year, and stop flying with my yoga mat again. And just really, when you throw yourself into a new role, sometimes you disconnect from your friends at large. So just kind of start, doing that. I don't have any goals of running a marathon with my husband, who's always trying to rope me into one. That's never happening. But I have an 18-year-old who's out of the house, an empty nester. Just kind of try to create a balance across work and life. Haven't perfected that yet, Mo. Still working on it,
Well, it's hard. I'll tell you that much. And I'm as I'm getting older, I'm realizing that there's always a new challenge that you have to kind of figure out, right? So I totally get it. On your point on the books, it's interesting you say that. So I'm a big reader, and I actually was in the past more of a fan of the physical book, Exhibit A, but I've converted to this, right, which is an iPad, and I have so many more books I can fit into this. That being said, I recently was like, you know what? So I'm reading a book right now. I've talked about this to a number of people already, but I'm reading a book right now called The Making of the Atomic Bomb. And it's a story of the Manhattan Project, the history of the Manhattan Project, all the way from like the discovery of. Are you reading it? Have you read it?
I'm cheating because I'm watching the Netflix series that talks about this whole thing. Have you? Oh gosh, I'm going to blank.
I didn't know there was a Netflix
series that talks about this, and I mean, if you can get through the first 2 episodes, you'll be like, "Oh, I was scared stiff." Like that stuff.
Okay, I'll have to look it up.
I'm going to send you the link if I remember the name as well. I should know because I think I'm episode 4 now, and that's been downloaded on my device. But send me the link to your book as well.
Yeah, well, so what I was going to say, like, so I'll definitely send you the book. It's a great book. Highly recommend it. It's big. It's like 1,000 pages. It's like maybe even bigger than that, and it's thick. And I have been like, every time I'm traveling, I'm like carrying it around with me, but I'm like, this is so impractical. It just like literally adds like 5 pounds to like my bag. Like, and I'm sorry, I hate to say this, but I'm going back to the iPad. I tried. It's just like, there's certain size books that it's just, as much as I would love to have the physical copy, I just can't anymore.
But also, I have the same iPad that you have over there, but gosh, I'm forever going, do I have the right charger for it? And then they swapped it out and my phone isn't the same charger as my iPad, and it's just logistics. And
or the worst,
can I fit it into my handbag, right? That becomes another challenge as well.
Or the worst, you're getting ready for, going to the airport and you grab your iPad and you're like, oh, like what's the charge? And it's like 2%. And I'm like, oh no. That's like,
and you don't have the right wire, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
But Netflix, that's a series that I'm going through, and it's really, wow, that just happened in this era, and wow, those kinds of things. But also on the physical book, my to-do list is biographies. Right, there are some people that I've admired, and I want to read about their stories and see how they did what they did. So that's something that I'm aiming to, I've bought a few and they're sitting on my very nice new shelving system in my library, in the house, but I need to pull it out and start opening it. And carrying a hardback is tough, right? Carry on.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah.
have to now. You have to tell us what biographies these are. At least give us one.
So I got her biography, and
okay.
I wanted to look at that and read through that. There's some powerful women that I wanted to read about and see how they went through certain things that I trip around on. But hey, we've just started something new. I think in the Payload newsletter, we should be doing a book club too.
I was just going to say, maybe we should do a book club. I'm literally thinking hey, maybe I'll pass that on to the editorial team. Maybe we should maybe there should be like a, Payload book club. I think that's a great idea, actually.
Recommended books, and why. It's not just recommended books. It's recommended books and why. I know the team at Via Satellite always do this to me, like, what's in your playlist? What are you listening to, Tina? Or what's the latest movie you've been watching? So I think the Payload, we should have a section in the Payload newsletter that talks about books Mo is reading, or the next person.
There you go. So, Tina, always with the good ideas. Thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I know it took us some time, but it's been great. Thank you.
As always, you're always welcome back. So excited to see how things go and hear some more great updates in the future.
It's a date. See you then.
Okay. Bye.